Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. My special guest today is Barbara Barnes. Barbara is a real estate investor, broker, owner of the Barnes Home Team. She's based out of Washington, D.C., and she's the founder and CEO of the Academy of Probate for Real Estate. Barbara, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. I'm just so excited to be here to have this conversation and to get into some good stuff.
Awesome. Well, you've done some transitions in your life, right? You were in kind of corporate America for a long time, and you had a good government job, and at one point you had a really bad experience with a real estate agent, and that inspired you to kind of change the path of your career. Tell me about what happened.
Oh wow, I'm so excited. You know that about me. I have been in the real estate space now 10 years. And I purchased my first house when I was 24 years old, right? So I was working at the government, CFPB. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I was a contractor for GDIT as a consumer response specialist. So at the time, I didn't know anything about real estate, right? I was renting my house, well, still have two children, but had two daughters at that time. My oldest daughter was, I think she was like around 8 or 9, and my baby was like 1. So all of my coworkers were talking about buying property. They were like, you should buy a house. And I was like, well, maybe I'll get a condo or something like that. I don't know if I wanted to buy a house. So fast forward, I didn't have credit. Like I didn't have any good, I just had like maybe one trade line on my credit, which was like a car note. So I was like, you know what? Let me try to see what this thing is all about. So I did. And at the time I was pretty much broke. I didn't have a lot of money. So I purchased a foreclosed property. And that property needed a lot of work, right? So I had to make a decision because I wasn't happy in my apartment. I had to make a decision like, am I going to buy this house and get to the next level of my life, or I'm going to stay here at this apartment? It was a blessing. I'm going to say it at the end, like how everything all came together. So after I went under contract, um, I found that the HVAC system, the A coil, and all of the copper, somebody stole it out the house, right? And they stole it, and I was purchasing this house. Actually, when I was buying the house at the time, I was pregnant. I was pregnant at the time. I'm sorry. So, I bought the house in January, and literally, when I purchased the house, I didn't have any heat. Okay. So I'm a 24-year-old. I was in a relationship at the time. Me and my partner, we were both broke. And that made me, it piqued my interest about real estate. I didn't know I had this dog in me, right? And I was telling my agent, like, if you don't get them to reimburse me my money for this item, I'm going to fire you. And I couldn't even fire him because I was already under contract, but I didn't know. So I ended up making so many phone calls, and the government reimbursed me, right? So they reimbursed me. So that kind of piqued my interest to real estate. When I got into real estate, I thought real estate was only like taking people out in your car, showing them houses. Like I thought that was it. So when I took my real estate test, I set a goal. I said, listen, I by the time I'm 25 years old, I want to have my real estate license. So I set a goal. I took the class, passed the class on the first try, and got my license. I interviewed at 2 brokerages. Okay, I interviewed with one brokerage and said, "Well, the average agent only makes $25,000 when they first come in." So I was like, "Why would I want to do that?" The second guy told me, he was like, "Well, our some of our agents are making 6 figures, and I believe you can do it." I was like, "You think I can do that?" So it really inspired me. He was like, and then he also said, he's like, well, we have a real estate investment club meeting, and I think you should come. I'm a very curious person. So I was like, you know what? Okay. So I got my license, went under that broker. He's actually my mentor still to this day. And he's talked about flipping a contract, which is wholesaling. And I'm like, how can you do that? So I am the type of person, I'm going to learn. I am going to figure this thing out. And one of my colleagues at the time was talking about this thing called probate. He was around my age. He was in his 20s. He's like, I paid off all my debt. I did this probate deal. And I'm like, what is that? So he took me to the courthouse and he showed me the process. And I've been doing literally that ever since. It took me about 4 months to get my first probate wholesale deal. I made $20,000. The next month I made $15,000. And then I just kept making money in this space. And what I've learned is that the probate niche is recession proof, it's tried and true. Unfortunately, people pass away every single day. And people who pass who have properties, they have to do something with it. So that's where I come in, and that's pretty much my specialty. So that was a lot, but
No, it's good. We want to get a good understanding of your background because it's helpful for the audience to understand, well, if Barbara can do this, right, maybe I can do it, right? And we all have different backgrounds, and some of us start off on a better foot than others. And when you first got started, like you said, you were broke, and you had a family, an emerging family, and so you had, you know, all the reason in the world just to be like, I can't do this, but you didn't, right? And that's what I think a lot of people will resonate with, is that there are definitely obstacles that are put before us. Then we have a choice. Are we going to figure it out? Are we going to push through? Are we going to go through the hard times? Or are we just going to fall back into what's comfortable, what we know, and what people tell us that we can do, because there's always those naysayers, right? You probably had people, family members, friends, are like, Barbara, you're crazy. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't buy a house. I wouldn't go do all those things, right?
I did. I did. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my life. Of course, I'm a minority. I'm a Black woman, and I'm a woman, and I'm a minority too, right? And I had my first child at a very young age. But growing up, I always thought that it's always more to know, right? I never took things in life as face value. I'll take the information and I'll process it and I'll come up with my way. So I've pretty much been an entrepreneur all my life. Like I used to sell donuts on the side of the road, and I don't really tell a lot of people the story, but I was in elementary school making $200-300 a week, right? I was selling candy. My mother pretty much instilled that hustler's mentality in me, to go get it. And I felt that, you hear people talk about this fire and desire, and the inside had this fire inside of me. I quit my job 6 months after getting my real estate license. Okay. Now, I'm not encouraging people to do that, but one thing I know is that when God has something for you, it's so hard. It's so hard for you to walk away from. It keeps gnawing at you. It keeps pulling on your heart. So, I closed 2 transactions and I quit my job. And I had a house, right? Talk about my house. I ended up selling that house a few years later, made over $100,000. Selling the property. But I told myself, I said, I'm 26. Mind you, I got my license at 25, but I quit my job at 26. I said, you know what? If this doesn't work out, I can always get another job, or I can just sell my house. I'm like, but I felt in my heart that it was so much that I didn't know that I needed to know in order for me to grow as a person. And I'm like, this job ain't it. Like, it's just not doing nothing for me. And I was only making like $19 an hour. So I'm like, well, I only can go up. Like, I don't think I can get lower than this, right? And I just had that self-belief. I've always had a strong belief in myself, and this is what I teach people and I encourage people. You gotta dig deep within, and I don't try to push my spirituality on anyone, but I am God's child. Like, God loves me, and I'm sure He wants a lot for me, because the better I am to the kingdom and to other people. So that's kind of how I base my life principles. And yeah.
So let me understand, the drive portion of it, because some people can say, it is God and it's the Lord that's driving me, but some people believe it's my goals and what I want for myself and for my family. Like, what drives you? Do you have like really, what do they call those? Hairy, uncomfortable goals. I can't remember what it is. There's some acronym for it. Or is it like your faith that drives you, or is it both?
It's both, actually. It's both. First, it was my goal. At first, when I got into the business, it was to make money, right? But that doesn't last long, right? It's something that's in the inside of you. It's kind of like a selfish thing. Like, I want to make so much money. Like, these are my goals. But the true wealth is in helping people, right? No, I'm not saying that I'm not going to get to my goal without helping someone, but the at the end of it, it's about helping someone else, right? Because I understand how valuable a skill set is and a mindset. To have a certain type of mind and mentality is a blessing in itself. So if I can convey my value and impart in someone, and that could, certain words can change someone's life. Like, when my broker, when I first got into the business, he said, well, you can make $100,000. No one has ever told me that. That's all I needed to hear was his words. So if my words can impact somebody and be the change in someone's life, like, that's why I'm here. and then understanding that I have the skill sets to be a multimillionaire. Am I there right now today? I'm not, but I'm on my way. And I have no doubt that that's going to happen for me because that's what God wants for me. He doesn't want it for me personally, but he wants it so that I can represent myself to the world and help other people, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, it does. Like there really are, there's role models out there for lots of people, but you know, being a minority and a woman, there are fewer, right? Just in the word minority, right? There's fewer of you. So there's going to be fewer role models too. And so to put yourself, be like, okay, I want to be a role model for others, for other, young Black women. That's really powerful. That would certainly be a really good inspiration every day. Like you wake up, you roll out of bed and it's gloomy out and you don't want to go to the gym and you just want to, eat Cheerios for breakfast. And we were talking about how you're on this fitness journey, right? So you're pushing on all sides of your life, but you're not letting those negative thoughts keep you down.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's true. And that's so true.
So so you decided to get into real estate, and you found a niche early on, which is I think that's really rare. Like you right out of the gates, you didn't have the need or the want to become a traditional real estate agent who just drives people around. Like you went right into probate, which I don't even know probate. I've been in the business for 20 years and I've never really like learned the probate process. I've done other things, but probate's one of those things that just never crossed my path. But you jumped into it right away. Um, Explain for the audience what a probate is, right? Maybe people might not know, and where are the opportunities and disadvantages of operating in that space.
Yeah. So probate is the court administered process that happens when someone passes away, pretty much, right? So if you don't have a well, even if you have a will, so your will can still go through the court process, right, to administer your assets. If you have a trust, you can kind of circumvent the process depending on how you set up your estate, right? If you, let's just say you have a bank account, I'm just going to use this as an example. If you have a bank account or if you have a car, your car, you can put a beneficiary on your car or on any pretty much asset that you have. So if you put a beneficiary on an asset, you avoid probate, right? So what happens is normal people like us, like our cell phone is a part of our estate. Everything that we own is our estate, our glasses, our computers, everything that we own. And typically people don't think about putting their assets, meaning their property, in some type of trust. Now, so what happens with the probate process is people who are just like normal everyday people, they own a house, they own a property, they pass away. And the question is, what happens to the house if a person didn't have a will? Only 33% of Americans actually have a will, and a will does not circumvent probate. You still have to go through the court process. Probate is just a court process, right, to administer your estate. So, what is administering your estate? It's who gets what, right? So, who gets the house, or who gets the car, or who gets the jewelry? Like, think about like a Michael Jackson or Prince or somebody like that. If they didn't do asset planning, you have big luxury items, right? You're not talking about just a house, but for average everyday people, our house is our biggest asset. So the benefit of the probate niche specifically is the fact that we know that if someone passed away, that if there's a house left in the estate, that something has to happen to it, right? They're either going to keep the house in the family with multiple heirs on it, which is it rarely happens because people just can't get along, um or someone in somewhere in the hierarchy of the family will purchase the property, or they'll buy everyone's interest out, right? Or they'll sell, but 90% of the sellers sell because you have to think about it. You're not necessarily expecting someone to pass away. Now, some people are sick and you can kind of expect, like, grandma and granddad is going to pass away. People are already maybe having those conversations of what's going to happen to the biggest assets. But like when you have deaths that are like, just tragic deaths, is not something that you're prepared for. So when I say prepared for, it's like, okay, now who has the finances, or who's thinking about having finances to actually finance this property, right? If you have to buy everyone out, you have to be financially in a position to. So when you get into the probate space, you have a personal representative who administers the entire process. But even though you have a PR, that person is now responsible for the bills and the debts of the decedent, right? Now, you might not pay the decedent's cell phone, I mean, not cell phone bill, but like credit card bill or student loan debt. But a lot of times you're going to pay for that house because you don't want the bank to take the house, or you don't want it to get, chewed up in a tax sale. So a lot of times when it pertains to real estate, that's the biggest and the first asset that someone's going to try to keep or hold on to. So then what happens is when you got one person doing everything, it gets very overwhelming. It gets time consuming and it gets financially draining, and something has to happen with the property. And a lot of times they sell. Now, that's the benefit of it. 90% of the sellers sell. Now, the drawback from it is it takes time, right? When you are a real estate professional, real estate investor, real estate agent, you have to understand you have to have emotional intelligence, right? You have to understand that this is family business. So because these two people are fighting, it has nothing to do with you. Like your job is the real estate professional to get the property sold, whatever that looks like. So understanding that, people are fighting a lot. People are not on the same page a lot. And people are going to have so many people in their ear. And that's the challenge. Another challenge is what happens is when you open up your estate, is this thing called a publication period. So you have to do a publication in the newspaper and you have to alert all creditors that, such and such has passed away. So some people want to wait that publication period. Like in my area, it's 6 months, right? But you don't necessarily have to wait 6 months to sell any asset. People wait because they don't know if the decedent may have some creditors that may come back. But what happens is when you sell property or just valuables in an estate, you can't touch the money right when you sell anyway. So you can sell as soon as possible once the estate is open. But it's kind of like people, the PRs don't understand that because they don't want to put themselves at risk, so they wait and it actually costs them more money. So just understanding that it's going to be a process. People are going to take their time and they're fighting, and that's going to be challenging, especially if you're new. But I work with a lot of great people, and and a lot of times they work with you because they trust you. So yeah.
So the opportunity then from a real estate investment perspective is that they need to sell, and they may not want to go out and put it on the market and get retail, like the top dollar. So they want their money fast, right?
Yes and
So
no.
there's an opportunity to come in and potentially get it less than market value, and that's where the opportunity is.
Well, yes and no. So the reason why they'll work with an investor is because the properties need work. Okay. So probably I would say about 80% of the properties need work, right? Because someone may have owned their house for a very long time. Like I'm on my way I'm about to do a deal now. The property has been in the family for 40 years. So people are not updating their properties like that. They're not.
Right.
They need a lot of work, right? So that's one of the benefits to a real estate investor. And another benefit to the real estate investor is it's either a no mortgage or like a little low mortgage, like on the property. So there's equity in there. It's equity in the property and it needs work, right? So that's already a deal. And then in some situations, you have a reverse mortgage situation. Now, what the reverse mortgage situation is, it's typically difficult for a PR to buy that reverse mortgage out because the reverse mortgage typically is high. And you may have a little bit of equity in it of the property, right? And then when someone passes away, technically the loan is now due. But with the reverse mortgage, the companies will give typically, because laws change and things change all the time, they'll give the personal representative a year to sell the property. So I'm working on a Novation deal right now where it's a high reverse mortgage, but it's still enough equity in the deal for me to get in and get out, right? And the property it's not like a gut job, right? It just is like a cosmetic type thing. So the benefit as a real estate investor is that I can pay this young lady more. She's going to walk away with some money, right? But I'm also going to walk away with some money too, and it's not going to cost me an arm and a leg to do like I would never do a full gut on a novation. So that's where the opportunity comes in, right? Because it would be great if we can put it on the market, but if we put it on the market, then we got to clean the house, we got to do all these, and the client doesn't have the funds to do that, or she just don't have the bandwidth. She just want to get it over and done with. So the benefit to an investor is a lot of the properties have, they're high equity, low mortgages, or it's a reverse mortgage situation where they have to make a move, right? They have
Mhm.
all of the motivation in the world. So that's the benefit to an investor. And the benefit to a realtor is that the properties who are not for investors, they have to sell and then you can put it on the market to get a commission. Or you can be somebody like myself. I'm a hybrid. I understand real estate investing and I understand listing. So like I just closed a deal a few months ago. My commission is over 6%. I'm not going to talk about the numbers because I don't know this whole lawsuit thing. But at the end of the day, the end buyer was an investor. So I'll make $33,000 on that. Well, I made $33,000 on that deal, and then I'll still negotiate another commission with the cash buyer because they just want the deal. So that's how you can make money. And I teach
Mhm.
people how to capitalize on an opportunity that's not pretty. So some realtors, they just want the pretty house. They want the $1 million houses. I don't care what it looks like. So I just closed the deal. Um, I sold the house. The buyer went under contract for 295, right? I'm commissioned at over 6%. So I already have my money locked in at $20,000 with the seller. Now I negotiate with the buyer and I say, hey, I need a bonus. I need a $10,000 bonus to get this done. They agree and everything is above board. The seller knows, I know, and that's just what it is. So that's $30,000 on a $295 house,
Mhm.
$295,000 house. Now you can't, I mean, to make $30,000 on a deal, you have to at least sell like close to $1 million house, right? So for
Right.
me, I don't really care what the price of the house is. I just care about the deal. So I teach
Sure.
people that because there's so many ways that you can monetize and capitalize on the opportunities that you have.
Yeah, it's just about being creative, right? It actually makes me think about it too. So, like, let's say you came across a probate deal that had very little equity and it didn't make sense to list it, but it might cash flow. Is there an opportunity to do seller financing or like a sub
Mm-mm.
two in a probate situation?
Yes and no. So it depends, right? So when you're doing like a sub two or like a cash flow type deal, the question is who owns the property, right? Who
Hmm.
owns it? So if the estate owns it, something has to happen with it because you have to close out the estate. So typically what will happen is the property will be transferred to a party in the estate. But it's not that simple because you have other parties in the estate who may want something from the property. Now, let's just say you came across the probate opportunity, and let's just say in the will was for the property to go to this specific person. Now that's considered an inherited house because they inherited it. Now you can do whatever you want with it. The challenge with like sub two or is just who owns the property. It's who
Hmm.
the ownership of it. Because if an estate owns it, it's more than one party, right? And then if I own it with my husband or just if it's just me, then you're talking to me. But when you're talking about an estate, typically you're talking about multiple parties, and that's where it gets complicated. Probate is really good for novation. They could be really, really good for they could be good for landlording if you know who the property, like who the inheritant, who the person is going to inherit the property. But if the
Hmm.
person isn't inheriting, it's not good. It's not good for that.
Yeah. Explain more about the novation angle. Like, what does that structure look like, just in layman's terms for everybody?
Okay, so novation is just pretty much it's saving you on financing, right? Finance costs. So like when you get a loan or if you're going to purchase an investment opportunity, you have to pay points, then you have to pay your interest, whatever your interest is, 12%, 10% interest over, it's like say a 12-month period. Then you have to pay your closing costs, right, to the title company, uh transfer and recordation, whatever, right? So when you're doing innovation, it saves you all of those fees on the front end. You still have to pay the fees on the back end because you're going to be selling it to a retail buyer, right? You
So
still have to pay
what is
closing.
innovation though? Explain that.
Oh, okay. So it's pretty much you go under contract with the seller, right? And then you're going to substitute the contract for a third party purchaser, which is the retail buyer. Does that explain it good? Right. So
Explain it
what
for someone who has no understanding of the business.
okay.
Say you're explaining
So
it to the seller.
okay, great. So this is what I'll tell the seller. I'll say, hey, typically when I purchase a property, I will have to pay, closing costs, points, things like that. So me going into this deal with you is going to save me money. So with that being said, I can actually give you a little bit more profit. But what's going to happen is you're going to get that profit after I fix the property up, right? So we see that the property is in this condition, and in this condition, you're not going to make a profit. So in order for you to make a profit, we got to put it on the market at this price, whatever the price is. So with that being said, I'll come in, I'll renovate the property, and let's just say you want a $30,000, you just want $30,000. I'll make sure you get $30,000 after everything is said and done, and then I'll be reimbursed for doing the repairs and then whatever my profit is, if that makes sense. So that's pretty much how I explain it. I'll say I'm coming in, I'm doing the renovation, I'm going to make sure that you net whatever it is that you want to net, whatever that number is, and then anything left over is pretty much profit to me. But the benefit
Yeah.
is if you were going to put it on the market, you wouldn't really walk away with anything because the numbers are so tight. Because when you're a seller, you still got to pay a realtor's commission, you still have to pay transfer and recordation, you still have to pay fees. So the question is, how much are you going to walk away with? And doing it this way, you'll walk away with more, but it'll take a little bit more time.
Yeah, I
If that
think the
makes
key
sense.
distinction there for people to understand is that there's no transfer of title. Like when you come in and you're doing the renovation, you don't buy it, own it, and then repair it. You're coming in and then you basically are partnering up with the homeowner. You're going to repair it while they still own it,
Mhm.
improve the value of the property, and then sell it on the back end. So you actually add a lien to the house with the current owner. You're improving the value of the property. You're coming probably out of pocket to do the renovation. That's your risk. You're improving the value
Mhm.
of the home, and then it's the only difference is like with a normal fix and flip, you take ownership, you fix it up, and you sell it. With a novation, the owner has ownership during the whole renovation process, right? And then at the end, you guys split up the proceeds however it was agreed upon when you
Mhm.
created the agreement, right?
Mhm. And
That's
I think
that's
that's
the
the
main difference is there's
and I
no
think
there's no
that's
transfer of title.
yeah, and it's kind of scary sometimes because it's like, wow, the person still owns it. Like, what if? You have to in business, you just got to understand who you're dealing with, right? You got to understand the
Mhm.
situation at hand. I wouldn't do this deal with a lot of people that I work with because I understand their personality profiles, their skepticism. Like, I don't have time for that, right? I really want to solve your problem. And then, like I don't do a bunch of novations, but I've sold, opportunities to other people. um it's all about what makes sense, right? Like, is this person likely to walk away, or how much risk am I willing to take, right? If I have
Yeah.
$30,000, I mean, I don't want to lose 30 grand, but can I lose 30 grand and still be okay? I could, but now that may be a risk tolerance for someone else. That might not be a thing. So it's all about
Right.
you and the risk that you're willing to take with these opportunities.
But also too, you hedge your risk by filing a lien against the property for the
Yeah.
amount of money you put into it. So if at the end of the day that person says, "Oh, I don't want to sell anymore," you
Mhm.
still have a lien against the house. So
Yeah, you protect some of your interests that way, but you can't get your time back. I think my
no,
time is more valuable than this money, and then I can't even get my perceived profit because I'm not doing this just to be fixing up your house. Like, so this is the
no,
reason why this is why I like the innovation in the probate space because of the reason that they have to sell, right? And
right.
then what happens is when you have these conversations, you know that they can't afford the house, like that they can't even get the mortgage because you're not framing it that way, but you're asking these questions up front. So,
Hmm.
do you have the credit? Like, why don't you, so you're asking all of these questions. Now, people can lie, whatever, but you can bet your bottom dollar that they're selling that property because they need the money or the family members aren't, in agreement for whatever reason, and it has to be sold. Not someone who's thinking about selling, they have to sell. It's
Yeah.
not a question. So, yeah.
In innovation, tell me if this makes sense just to like hedge your risk even further. Could you do a purchase and sale agreement with the seller of the house between you and them that has basically specific performance built into it where they have to sell you the house,
Hmm.
even if at the very end they say, because you don't have an end buyer yet, right? You don't have
Hmm.
an end
Hmm.
buyer lined up.
Yeah.
And so you could do that with the novation agreement. So at the end of the
Hmm.
novation, when it's done, you've completed the renovation project and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to sell. I changed my mind." I'm like, "You like, no, you have to. You have an agreement with me to sell." So you could force them to sell it to you.
Yeah, you can. So in the novation agreement, it's this thing called, if I'm not mistaken, the memorandum of contract, where you can go file the actual contract itself against the property as a list pending, similar to like a mechanic's lien. Like you're technically putting a cloud on title. So
Right.
in the novation agreement, you have that memorandum of contract, and you can put that on. You can literally, you can, once everything is agreed to in the contract, you can go file that at any time. So they can't sell it, right, without going through you. So you could definitely, most definitely protect yourself that way. It's just now, it's just time and all of the
Right.
BS that you have to go through. But yeah, you definitely got to protect yourself that way. So you definitely want to make sure that you're able to file that memorandum at your county's clerk's office. I mean, I'll do that before I even do put the lien on the property, because even now, like in in the DC area, it's very competitive. People will, it hasn't happened to me. I'm blessed, but I've had colleagues where somebody will go under contract with them and then say, "Oh, I got a better contract, and I don't want to work with you." Now, that's not even like just off a regular deal, and then you can go file that memorandum of contract, and no, you don't have another deal. Like, you got to go through me, and whatever you guys agree to or settle with is, between the parties. But yeah, you
Yeah.
definitely got to protect yourself.
Right. So lots of opportunities in probate, but you also do wholesale, right? So you wholesale probate deals. Are you
Hmm.
wholesaling probate deals to other investors, or are you,
Hmm.
how does that work? Where if it's like you're doing the whole process, what are you wholesaling? Which paper are you wholesaling?
Hmm.
Because if
So
are you wholesaling the memorandum, or are you wholesaling a purchase and sale agreement?
purchase and sell agreement. It's just a purchase. This is the purchase and sell agreement. The memorandum is just for like the county's clerk state, right? You
Hmm.
don't wholesale that. You just have your purchase and sell agreement and your assignment agreement. It's just straight wholesaling. Probate is just a way to get the deal, right? No different than absentee, pre foreclosure, or whatever list, tax delinquent, whatever.
Right.
Probate is just an avenue to find deals, but it's the same
Got it.
process. Purchase and sell agreement.
Are you keeping any of these houses for yourself yet? Are you building a portfolio of rental properties yet?
Not yet. So, okay, so here's the thing. I've flipped a few properties.
Hmm.
Um, I made about one or two properties, but I'm really not a big fan of the single family model, not in the DC area, because DC area, the cash flow is so, I mean, you get appreciation here, right? Which is beautiful. Like, it helps your net worth.
Right.
Um, I like multifamily. Like, that's my ultimate goal. Like, I feel like it's just so much economy of scale. It makes so much sense, when, let's just say you got 100-unit property and three people move, you're not 100% vacant. When you got a single family house, you're literally 100% vacant. Then you got to turn it over, praying that they didn't mess your house up, right? So if you look at your cash flow, if you're doing it from a cash flow perspective, you're not making money, because then you still got to turn the property over, and then it's going to be vacant for a period of time before you get the new tenant in there, right? So
Right.
if I'm buying like a $30,000 or $20,000 house in some rural area, yeah, that would make sense, because I'll probably pay cash for it. But when you talk about like in my area specifically, like you're gonna spend 250, 300 for a decent property. It's like, is it really worth it? Is the juice worth the
Yeah.
squeeze? Now, it may be worth the squeeze if it's like, okay, boom, I want to build up my net worth because I'm trying to do whatever I'm trying to do. Um, so I'll hold a few in the DC area, maybe like two or three, but really I don't I like multifamily. That's really what my focus is going to be on long term.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the DC area is expensive, but you could go across the border and go into Prince George's County and get something in Hyattsville or District Heights. There's
Same.
fourplexes, or, some multifamily properties, because some of those areas are still growing.
Well, I grew up in Prince George's County. So when we talk about
Hmm.
DC, we're talking
Yeah.
about DC, Maryland, and Virginia, right? So I
Right.
predominantly work out of Washington, DC itself, Prince George's County, and Charles County, right?
Hmm.
So even like in a District Heights area, you're going to spend somewhere in the 200s for a property. Like, so what happens is, because PG County is very high, right? So like I just
Yeah.
saw the deal in Lanham, the one I was telling you about, for 295. That's not DC, that's right outside of DC. So
Right.
depending on where you are in the area, now you can go to Temple Hills and maybe buy a townhouse for like maybe 185. But people are very sophisticated here. They know what they want, they know the value, they know the worth.
Hmm.
Even Hyattsville is high. It's so expensive. Like it's almost the prices in DC. It's crazy.
Well, that's where a lot of the people who work in DC, they just commute, right? They just live on the other side of the border, and the prices drop by like 80% just going, 5 miles.
That's not true. So remember the house that
No?
I told you that I bought my first house? Not okay. So
Hmm.
I bought this house on Southern Avenue. Southern Avenue is a main street. You have DC on this side and Southern Avenue on this side. It's not 5 miles. It's literally could be 2 minutes away. So I'm in PG County now. The townhouses in DC are pretty much the same price. Now they're maybe about 30 or $40,000 more, but it's
Mm.
high. That same house that I sold, I think the owner resold it and made, I think she sold it for like 360, right? So in across from there, the neighborhood is a southeast neighborhood. So in southeast, a townhouse you can spend on a renovated house, not like a brand new house. You're gonna spend between like 300 to 400,000. She was across the street in Suitland, which is PG County, and she sold her house for 360. So no, like the outskirts of DC, like PG County areas are super duper high. Like
Yeah.
it's not as cheap as it used to be. So you just have
So
to
where do you go to
understand that.
get deals? Do you go to Baltimore County?
I'm in DC and PG.
No, but where
I'm
would
in,
you go to get these deals that you're looking for? If you don't want to pay the DC area prices, where would you go to get
I would
a
go to
deal?
DC and PG. So it's just understanding the equity play. Like I wouldn't
Hmm.
necessarily do it for cash flow play. It would be mainly equity play,
But we're
right?
talking about cash flow play right now. We're talking about where would you find deals, the cash flow in a multifamily sense? Which market would you choose
Oh,
then?
oh, you say in a multifamily sense,
Yeah,
or
from a
in a
cash flow perspective.
Oh, well, I wouldn't. Well, so from a multi-family sense, I wouldn't choose DC specifically because it's
Hmm.
tenant friendly. So DC does not like landlords. For some reason, somebody can be in your house for years or your apartment for years, and you just go through the ringer, right?
Wow.
So the Baltimore play would be the best for cash flow for multifamily because the price is not predicated on the actual building, is predicated on the income, right?
Right.
The income of the property. So yeah, Baltimore would be good for that. PG County, yeah, it's some I don't PG is very I don't want to use this word, but cliquish, right? You have a lot of
Mm.
rich people, multi millionaires, and it's just like it's hard. I wouldn't say it's hard. Everything is hard, but it's like these are the guys or these are the girls or whatever. But if I was to look for a multi-family opportunity, it would be definitely in the Baltimore market, not
Hmm.
DC. And even like 4 units in DC, they sometimes some of them are hard to rent out because they be in the hood.
Right.
And you got to understand that people in the hood still want a certain quality of life too. So it's like you still have to compete. So yeah,
Right.
it would make sense for the Baltimore market, but I wouldn't be looking for fourplexes. I would be looking for like, at least 100 doors, right? At the
At
end of the day,
least you're going right from 4 to 100.
and it's
Talk
crazy because
about being motivated.
I think it's crazy because I'm not, listen, I'm not saying that I'm there yet. I'm not gonna, my mind, this is the way I think. I'm not there. I haven't, like, I'm not trying to make it seem like I'm this person when I'm not, but that's the way I think. I was just, at this, dinner with this billionaire and, he talked about how he got started in affordable housing, luxury affordable housing in the DC area with doing RFPs and things like that. And he talked about we were in a $60 million project. He got that deal for $1 million to develop. And I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. So we had this whole conversation and I need to know. I'm like, so what did you do? So he talked about how he lost the bid twice. And the third time it was just sweet. He talked about how when he structured the deal, he owns it 100%. He didn't have any partners in it. He got 100% financing from a Amazon fund. And he purchased the project for $1 million. And it's like a $60 million deal. Ridiculous. So I
Amazon
think
fund, like Amazon the company.
like Amazon, the company.
How does that work?
So
What do you
so so listen, I'm not the billionaire, right? I'm the student. But
right?
what I took from the conversation is, Amazon expands into these markets, right? So like we have a lot of new Amazon centers here in the DC market, right? Um, So the apartment building is right across, like right off the metro. And he talked about when he called it stalking, when he was stalking the lady who made the decision. He talked about how this will be help provide housing for, the Amazon workers, the new workers in the, in the area and things like that. So they have a fund. I don't remember what the name of the fund is. It's probably somewhere on my phone, but he talked about how he was able to get 100% financing for the deal. He owns the deal 100%. So the reason why I think like this is because when I listen to people talk, nothing is above me. I just feel
Right.
like, it's about timing and it's about what God wants for me. And if I'm in alignment. Now, if this is not what God wants me to do, I won't do it. But multifamily is something that's in my trajectory here in the near future. And like raising money and things like that, I'm not there yet, but it doesn't scare me. I'm like, if the numbers work and we're all gonna profit from it, you're just putting the team together, whatever, good people, credibility, and things like that. And when you got a good name, that just holds weight. I mean, good, just being a good person, in my opinion. So
Oh yeah.
I think that
Yeah,
kind of
right,
went
right
off
before
the.
I saw you, I was at an event in Houston. It was the Heroes Capital Raising Summit, which is where I met a lot of the people that was like the day before I got to the family. So that would be something you should check out. It's
Okay.
the Alliance is what they call them. I'll give you the info, but it's a good group of people. I'm having several of the people that are coaches and mentors in that group on the podcast. I interviewed a guy yesterday, Ian. He's an Australian. He came from modest background, but then he went into Wall Street, and he worked for like some big hedge funds and capital companies, and just then he got into the multifamily space, and right now he's raising like a few $100 million for a project. And so those are the kinds of people that run in those circles. So I'll definitely, try to get you some introductions there, because it's just really good people that want to help, right? They don't believe that like they've accomplished so much that they don't want to help other people. And that's what's so great about this industry is there are a good amount of people who are out there and they've accomplished a certain level of success, but they realize that they didn't get there on their own. So they want to start to give back, and they're willing to have dinners, like, these billionaires have dinners and talk to somebody who's just like asking questions and is hungry for, for more information. That's what's so amazing about this. Have you had somebody else besides your broker who got you in the business that's helped you along the way?
Absolutely. I mean, I just been so blessed to have people in my life. When I talked about doing my first deal, I had a friend, a colleague, the same guy who was like, I paid off all my debt. So one day he called me and he was like, Barbara, what you doing? I was like, I'm just chilling, nothing. He was like, well, I just, cause actually does a lot of land. Shout out to Damian Dupuy. That's my guy. I got to give him a shout out. He does a lot of land wholesaling in the North Carolina area. But he called me one day and was like, what you doing? I'm like, nothing. He was like, well, I just closed a $20,000 land deal with Mr. Such and Such. Like, what's up? I swear to goodness. 2 weeks later, I closed the $20,000 probate deal. And I couldn't believe it. I think it was just for me, just imparting in me and believing in me. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
that meant a lot to me. And then there was another guy who helped me. Um, when I was doing my first flip, I was blessed to find a 70. Listen, we're talking about Prince George's County, right?
Hmm.
It was a probate deal. I bought the deal for $70,000, right? You're never going to find that ever. You might get lucky. And I was just trying to wholesale. I was like, well, I could make 10,000. He's like, Barbara. He's like, I don't even want to buy from you. He was like, you don't understand what you can do. But this was my first flip. Like, you don't understand what you can do with this. He's like, you can learn so much from doing this deal. So he encouraged me to buy the property. He's like, you need to flip it. So I bought it for 70,000 and I sold it for $227,000. Right.
Amazing.
And this is why I was telling you that the values in PG County is going up, because that was just a 2 level, 3 bedroom, 2 bath house. And luckily it had like an addition on it. So I just, made it look pretty. So I was able to do that deal and I used my money. My mom helped me. She gave me a little bit of money to help me out, but I did it on my own. But he helped me. He's like, Barbara, make sure I don't know nothing about construction at this point. I'm just self-belief. And I'm like, well, he believes in me. I believe in me. I can do it. And he was just telling me about contractors and I had to fire people. He was like, but you were still, I did it in 6 months. He's like, you still did it. I'm just like, I'm not gonna lose. Like I can't. Like I don't like to lose people money. I don't like to lose in life. Like it was a big deal for me. So I've done other, stuff after that. Like nothing like of that size because I just feel like the numbers have to make sense. Like I like to make money. But those were the two people who are very instrumental in my growth. I'm a shout out my guy Damien, and then the other guy who helped me through my flip. It really changed my perspective about who I am and what I can accomplish in life.
Oh yeah. I mean, real estate, it's like it's romanticized, right? You have the fix and flip shows and people always think, okay, well, I can make money in real estate. And they think it's like a really quick path to wealth, right? And it is, right? It's one of the best ways to accumulate wealth, but it's got its challenges, right? Was there a particular deal or like a moment in your career where you were just like, I've had it, like this just isn't for me? And if so, how did you push through it?
It was a few occasions that happened, but what happened when I first got into the business, I didn't tell you this. Probate was something that I caught on to early on, but before probate, I would cold call absentee owners, right? So at this is before I quit my job. When I quit my
Mhm.
job, I was straight probate, but before I quit my job, I had one, two listings by cold calling. It was very challenging because somebody like cursed me out and I was like sad. But then I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. So I started winning listings just by calling. So I didn't understand. Like I was the type of person. If you tell me to do something, I do it. I don't think that is something that's going to go wrong. I don't calculate that, which is not always good. That's why I need people around me. But I just do it. So it was very challenging at one point because I couldn't get people to sign the paperwork. So I
Mm.
used to cry. I used to be like, what is it about me? Like, what am I doing wrong? So I started buying a lot of trainings, like sales training, psychology. Like, I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like, in the way you present yourself, the way you speak. So it was very difficult, um, but kind of easy in a way. And I won't say it's not easy. It was easy for me because I didn't tell you that I used to work at a Bank of America. I worked at Navy Federal Credit Union, and I was always in front of people, right? And I said, well, if I get on the phone, they don't have to see me, so I can be whoever I want to be. I was still Barbara, but I just kept getting it wrong. I kept getting it wrong, and I'm like,
Mm.
I need to learn how to get it right, and that was so hard for me. Then I hired virtual assistants and things like that along the way, and I learned. I said, well, they can just call on behalf of me. They could be passive. I'm the closer. So then I learned that. But then in 2023, I went through a breakup with my ex, and he provided for me a lot. I took a little, I was working, but I wasn't working as much because I wanted to spend more time with my girls. And I got to a point where it's like, damn, should I get a job? So I started applying for jobs. And this was recently. I prayed, but God was like, nope, you got to keep doing it. So I met this girl at the coffee shop. She's like an agent. She's like, well, Barbara, you still doing probate? Because I need help. So people started calling me like, I need help. I need help. So I had already created a certification, but I was like, I don't know if this is for me. But I mean, being spiritually inclined, this is where the spiritual part comes in. You need something bigger than yourself to keep you grounded. And those were like the main two challenges in my career. But I'm so grateful for what I went through because now it's like there's nothing that I can't do. Like, and then always staying connected to my source, which is God.
Yeah. And now you're taking all these experiences and you're taking this mindset that you've built up and you're teaching others how to do it. What is the coaching part of it? Like how does that work?
Okay, so well, before coaching, I always tell people you have to be confident in yourself, right? You have to dig within and you have to figure out like who you are. I think self-awareness is key in life,
Hmm.
right? Like what makes me happy? What makes me mad? Why am I this way? How do people receive me? I'm gonna tell you about the coaching, but this is before the coaching. So I teach people like you have to understand who you are and how others perceive you, right? You have your reality, then you have the reality of what people see and how people see you, and be honest about that, right? If you're pretty, you get privilege. That's just the truth, right? If you look a certain way, you don't get certain privileges. So just understand that and understand how you can call on other people to help you. You don't have to be the be all and the end all. So with the training specifically, I teach real estate investors, how to find the deals, what to go through, going through their, county's clerk's office, and I tell people you can go buy probate leads. Like you can go buy it, But at the end of the day, you need to know what you're buying. You got to understand the quality. You got to understand why you're buying it, why it's so expensive, and how to communicate. But specifically for realtors, I created a certification called Certified Probate Real Estate Expert, and they can become certified through, the use of my logo. And they have to, have at least closed 3 deals. They have to be in good standing, right? Their real estate license have to be in good standing, and they can't have any disciplinary actions. So I think with that being said, as far as the coaching and training, when they're going to these listing appointments and they're presenting themselves in front of personal representatives, they can be like, I have the certification. And I didn't just get the certification because I took a class. I still have to be in good standing, and they can show all of the requirements. And that is like, one of my guys just did $10,000. He just did a $10,000 deal, which I'm so grateful for, to be a part of that. A lot of people struggle with confidence. So, the certification helps boost that confidence. Like, I'm not just here to list your property. Like, I take my training and learning serious. And then the website and everything is really nice. I built everything myself. Story about that. But that's what it is. I think that confidence is key. Self-awareness is very important. And then understanding how to convey your value. So that's the reason why I do the trainings.
Oh, yeah. I can see anybody who gets around you would just be inspired. Like, you're such an inspirational person. You've got such an awesome, story. You've gotten through so much, and the sky's the limit. I mean, I believe that here in the next couple of years, you'll have your first multifamily deal. Like, I think it's going to happen probably sooner than you think. It's right around the corner. If someone wants to work with you in the DC area, or if they're interested in taking your certification course, like, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on all social media platforms at Barbara J. Barnes. That's Barbara, the letter J, and then the last name Barnes, Barnes. And if they were interested in learning more about the probate niche, they can go to www.academyofprobate.com. Academyofprobate.com.
Very cool. Well, Barbara, thank you again for taking the time. You've done so many cool things, and I definitely believe that you're an inspiration for minorities out there and women that want to do, great things. So really appreciate you taking the time. And for anybody out there who wants to connect with Barbara, definitely reach out to her. She is just a pleasure to be around. I got a chance to meet her out in Tampa a few weeks ago. So reach out to Barbara. And thank you for listening. Keep an eye out for more really inspirational guests like Barbara, who are doing cool things in the business space and the entrepreneurial space and real estate investing. And we're going to have more exciting guests coming here soon. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
That's a wrap on today's Real Estate Revelations. Thank you for tuning into the REI Hacker Podcast. Remember, every property has a story, and every deal is a lesson. Until next time, keep hacking the real estate world.